Hello and welcome back to Playtime with Rufus, a spiritual and metaphysical podcast unlike any other. I'm Mario Radinger and I'm really glad you've joined us again. In today's episode, we return to a theme first introduced earlier, the path of neutrality. Together with Rufus, who is coming through my dear friend Emily Lancry, we dive deeper into what it means for a soul incarnated on Earth to walk the neutral path, both in identity and in everyday behavior. We explore how neutrality shapes the way one relates to others and why a neutral player might appear like a chameleon in human society. Rufus explains the mindset required for neutral beings to raise their frequency, including the power of presence, joy, and authentic self-listening. You'll also hear about the unique strengths and pitfalls of neutrality, the freedom of choice, the value of non-action, and the potential challenges of a neutral soul growing up in a heavily polarized world. The conversation goes even further into relationships, showing how neutral players can bring balance and depth to partnerships, families, and communities. We also discuss what makes neutrality vibrate closer to source than positive and negative polarity, and why embracing non-judgment opens space for wholeness. If you've ever felt like you don't quite fit into the typical polarity of light or dark, or you resonate with seeing all perspectives as valid, this episode may hold a mirror to your soul, as the conversation did for our special guest Kai. This is episode 4 of Playtime with Rufus, where higher wisdom meets human curiosity. I now ask you, Emily, are you willing and wanting to connect?
Yes.
Then, with your permission, and only with your permission, I will now say the words you gave me to say to you, to help you enter this beautiful state of deep relaxation, ease, clarity, and connection.
Yes, we are. Hello,
Wonderful.
Mario. Hello, Kai.
Hi.
How are you guys doing today?
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
How are you doing?
We are doing very well, thank you.
It seems to have been easier today for you to come in than last time.
Yes, pretty much. We think that last time some energy was going on inside of Emily's body, but this time it was quite easy for us to come in.
Wonderful. Is there anything we can do to make Emily more comfortable?
She should be fine. She probably had a little bit of a dry mouth, but it's nothing major. It would not alter our talking today.
All right. Let us know if there's anything we can do, and please let us know if her voice is getting too strained at some point.
Yes, we will do just that.
Okay. Well, I'm here today with Kai, as you know, who is very interested in what we talked about the last time, neutral polarity.
Yes, we did talk about it a bit.
Yes. And today we would like to talk about this more because it's a very interesting and new concept to us. And we feel that this could definitely be part of the material that you're giving us and that we want to share with others. Would it be okay for you to do that today?
Yes, of course.
Excellent. Last time you told us a bit about what defines someone who is on the neutral path. And today we would like to start with the question, what a being incarnated on Earth in human form that is on this neutral path would have to embody in their everyday life. What would that look like?
In terms of what? Behavior, in terms of identity? Let's make sure we got your question correctly.
Both sounds very interesting. Let's start with maybe identity and then let's go on to behavior.
Yes, all right. Well, identity-wise, an incarnated soul of this purpose, which is neutrality, could pretty much have different identities, just as a soul incarnated on the purpose of what you may call light or what you may call dark will be able to have different identities and different personalities. This is not contained into one way of portraying yourself. But the difference that will show between the three is quite obvious to us and potentially obvious to you as well. Let's say someone observing neutrality will have what we may call a mingling, swaying identity because it will take in consideration the two others, meaning it will take in consideration things and people and ideas or philosophy of life as a whole instead of dividing the two in one category that will be brightness and category that will be darkness, if we may say that. So you'll see a soul that is in a vehicle called the body as we speak that will be observing neutrality will have an identity that could mingle pretty much with everything and everyone. It will be fairly easy for that person to accommodate or to interact with any surrounding and any other person, if we may say, on your planet, because it would be fairly easy to understand the other perspective as it takes both perspective in consideration. Do you understand what we're trying to say?
Yes.
All right. So in terms of identity, you have pretty much Mr. or Mrs. anybody that can accommodate to anybody, if that makes sense. On the side of behavior, it will be fairly non-judgment. So a person, as you may call it, that is observing neutrality as we speak, will be a person quite free of judgment. It will be a person that will be pretty much factual, that would be pretty much open to any perspective on a given situation, that will be pretty much open to understand any emotions involved in a given situation, that will be able to recognize the root of any emotion, reaction, action, behavior, vocabulary use, or whatsoever from a person. So it will be someone that could be labeled as a chameleon, if we may say, because they will just be able to take in consideration and of value anything that is been given to them. Does that make sense?
Is it okay if I ask you questions directly today?
Yes, you may both conversate with us. This is completely okay. We just want to make sure that the point we're trying to bring across is actually correctly served, if we may use that word.
I would say so. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Do you have any questions at this point? Okay. Could you explain what the ideal mindset would look like for someone on this path who wanted to ascend through the neutral path?
Yes. Well, first of all, remember, I think we mentioned this before. Let me check. Yes, apparently we did mention this before. Let us correct if it's not right. That somebody that is on the neutrality aspect of it will be pretty much on a higher level of frequency. Did we mention that before? We believe we did.
Yes, you did.
Correct. All right. So in terms of rising the given frequency, they will be started from a higher point already, a higher vibrational point. So in order to keep on raising the frequency, they would just have to climb their own ladder, just the same as any other person. They will have to assimilate, digest, integrate any experiences that they will be coming to live and experiment. So let's say if you have a neutral player that is coming to your playtime with a certain degree of vibrational frequency, and this player will embrace this aspect of themselves, meaning they will start to remember that they are more than just bodies, than flesh and bones, start to remember that everything is somehow connected, start to remember that they are coming here to experiment and start to enjoy the process of it, start to take care of their vehicle, start to really integrate everything they encounter, every reaction, every action, every interaction that they could have on this planet. A person that would really, what you call, live in the present somehow, but still embracing who they are fully and not just in terms of borrowed vehicle to play the game, but who they are as an incarnated soul and as well as soul itself. Somebody would definitely be on the path of raising their frequency through this game. Now, if you want to ask what it would look like in terms of action, attitude, behavior, reactions, embracing the neutrality aspect of it, we could give some concrete example, we believe. So let's say in groups of people, if you have the three players interacting with each other, one will be service of self, so will be definitely on the lookout for himself or herself, depending on what body they're using, but definitely put themselves as the most important part of the situation because their interest will be placed in their own self. Now, you take the other player that is serving all. This player will have tendency to, within its interaction, take in consideration others, make sure they are being respectful, make sure that they think about the group as a whole before they can think of themselves. Now, if you take the third player, the neutral one, this player will automatically know and acknowledge that both parties are at play, meaning within this group, they will have to deal with one side of the group that will be serving self and playing for themselves. And so they would be able to anticipate all the reaction and all the direction taken by this player. The same way they will be able to recognize that there is the other player at play that will be a service of all and will not be directed by self-interest. And therefore, the neutrality player will be able to acknowledge and maybe anticipate as well what will be served from that player. Now, his game or her game, depending on the vehicle used, but let's say he's just for the sake of it, his game as a player of neutrality will be to be using both to serve his purpose. Let's say sometimes service of self will be more relevant to this player in a given situation to be able to attain or succeed in the goal that was fixed to start with. In other situation, the service of all, put all as a unit in perspective, will be more successful in this given situation. So the neutrality player will be able to use from one toolbox or the other, disregarding of judgment. So if he was to use service of self, he will not be judging it as a bad thing nor a good thing. He will be judging it as a needed way to do it. The same is true for the other way. If he was using the service to all behavior or action or reaction or interaction, it would not be judged either. So it would not be thought of as a good thing or as a bad thing. It will be just thought of as a needed thing in order to make the situation go where this player wanted to go. This player would definitely give value to both way of dealing with the situation. Does that make sense? That will be the major difference with the two other player, because the two other player will polarize heavily and discredit somehow the other way of playing, meaning the playing for self will judge the other player as the not correct way to go, and vice versa. The neutrality player will not have, let's say, it's not about an opinion, but it's more about a clear judgment on how the game is played. For this player, it will be just a matter of achieving what needs to be done and taking information from a situation and deciding which way of playing needs to be applied to be the more efficient possible, giving the time or giving the situation that needs to be handled. Are we explaining correctly enough?
Yes. Yes. I do have a question, if it's a good time. Does the neutral player only, in quotation marks, have positive or negative action available? Or is there maybe a spectrum of action that is just for them, that's available to them?
It will be what you call neutral action or non-action or non-decision. In a given situation, there is several choices that can be made. You can choose this, you can choose that, or you can choose not to choose. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So for this player, this option will be definitely available, but we do believe it's available to every player. It's just a matter of bothering the player. Some players that have a very polarized, let's say, even if we're not sure this is the proper word to qualify, but let's use this one anyway, polarized game, then the fact of not choosing anything could appear as a problem because they would believe or feel like they are not doing their parts, like they are not actually taking choice or putting action forward in order to serve their purpose. But if you look at this from a different perspective, this is quite not accurate, because sometimes not choosing is a valid option, is a valid choice. And sometimes not choosing is the answer to a given situation. And it can actually allow the one player accepting not choosing or not to do anything to raise their frequency this way. Because sometimes taking a step back or putting distance between you and a given situation and waiting or patienting to make sure that something comes, and then you can make a choice. But in the meantime, just, putting yourself a little bit on the outside and observe more than acting on, this could be useful as well to any player. It's just coming more easily to players with neutrality because this is something they integrated to start with. It is something that they understand, that they can choose one way, the other way, or no way at all. and this is not bothering them because it is actually resonating with their program. Does that make sense to you?
It does.
Okay. We are happy it does.
Do you have any questions?
Yes, as I understand so far, it's good for positively polarized people to think positive thoughts, to do positive things. And then it's also best for the negatively polarized people to think negative thoughts, to do negative things. So is it for the neutrally directed person that they think neutral thoughts and do neutral actions, or is it more that they have the range of both positive and negative, and they
Well,
decide in that moment which makes them feel the best way?
yes. So let's dissect a little bit your question. We want to jump on one thing. The positive player, as you call them, it is good for them to do positive, as you call it, but it's also a possibility that is good for them to do negative. Let us explain first. A positive player cannot learn only by doing positive stuff. The positive player will need also to make mistake, to take wrong turns, to do stuff that are not resonating completely with them in order to trigger some response and some way of pulling themselves out of that feeling or that situation they did put themselves into, choosing the wrong option, let's say. This will give them some strength, and this will give them new knowledge, new way of using their creative way to get out of something, new way to connect with the environment, with people, with themselves, new way to look and do some shadow work maybe, and look at how and why they took that wrong turn, why they chose something that was not completely aligned with them, and look at the situation they put them in, and look at how now acknowledging this situation, acknowledging they took the wrong turn, if we may say, how they can now redirect, realign, get out of there, how they can use creativity to create new path for them. Does it make sense to you, Kai?
Yeah.
Yeah, the same is true for the other team. Let's say a negative player can not only choose negative, and also we want to point out that negative players will never believe or never see that what they're choosing is negative. To them, it is positive because they are in the service of self. So, because they do serve self, what the other player may look at from a negative perspective, this will never be the case for them. It will maybe be something that is not pretty to watch or to do, but it will be definitely positive because it would serve their purpose. So if they were choosing something that would not be aligned with them, that would be more inclined to serve all or serve others or serve definitely not themselves, but somebody else, let's say, that will be the same. If they make a choice that lead them to that situation, that steer them in that direction, then they will have to use their creativity to get out of it the same way the other player will have to. They will have to redirect their energy the same way the other will have to. They will have to find a way to rewrite their choices and make sure that they are back on track to serve themselves. But we want to emphasize that what someone may call negative is definitely not negative for the person using that path. Because if they are doing this, it's in order to serve a specific purpose. So therefore, it is positive. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now the last part of your question about the neutral player. Yes, you had that correct, we believe. This neutral player will be able to use any choices. Same as the other two players. Sometimes they will go wrong about it, and they will have to use their creativity to get out and redirect and readjust and realign and clean up the path because they chose wrong. And this is okay. This is the goal of it too. The goal for this incarnation, not to get everything right from the get-go, because this will be completely taking the interest out of the playtime, right? If we're not making mistake, we are not learning, or we're not learning big enough. By making mistake, by taking wrong turns, by doing stuff that are not necessarily resonating with us to start with, this give us the opportunity then to reconnect, to readjust, to grow out of it, to build more knowledge and toolbox, and to be able to somehow elevate. So making mistake, don't get it wrong. This is actually a good thing as long as you can grow from them, as long as you can, what you say, bounce back and create new ways and new codes for yourself, new tools for yourself. So this is definitely something of importance in your playtime. Making mistakes is good. Taking the wrong turn is good. Making choices that are not necessarily aligned with you is good, because it will put you facing yourself in a different way, and it will allow you to grow out of it. But for the neutral person, yes, they can use both, because they acknowledge that both exist together, and not one is better than the other. Not one is right, not one is wrong. They are both existing. They both are. So the player of neutrality doesn't have any problem with what you may call good or bad, negative or positive, because they don't really see it that way. They see it as a different way to serve different purpose, but not necessarily as wrong or bad or good and right. So they will be able to pull from both sides, quote mark, and apply to themselves if it serves what they are trying to accomplish. But they could also choose to not apply anything and wait and see where things goes on their own. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It does. May I ask a question?
Yes.
What is the difference between a neutral player that successfully uses his path to raise their frequency and ascend, and a neutral player who doesn't use their path successfully?
Yes. Well, the successful point will be if the neutral player is actually serving what's inside of them. Let's say a neutral player is still a player, still an incarnated soul, still have feelings, still have instincts, still have intuition, still works the same way as any other players. So sometimes you have a player that comes with the guts to want to do something, to find something that they really love, that bring them joy. Because remember, we mentioned this, Mario, before. Joy is very important. Some players are here because they need to fulfill this feeling, to feel joy, to feel satisfied, to feel good, quotation mark, about themselves, because of the way what they're living, what they're experiencing make them feel. So the neutrality player will have the same. They will know when something is resonating with them and something is not. They will know when something is actually feeding them, something is bringing them joy, fuel, or when something is pulling them down. If they listen to their own feeling, their own self, their own intuition, they will know the same. So some player of neutrality that will be successful will be a player that is able to tap into that feeling, to protect it, to nourish it, to basically use the food, and remember, when we use food, we use it in a very large intention, not just the nutrition part. So to use food that will actually serve them as a player, regarding of if it's something for self or the whole, no, just serve them as in feel good. They will go to a successful life because they will be able to be in touch with what really resonates with them. And because their code will be so imprinted, they could not be wrong about it. A player of neutrality that will be not as successful will be a player of neutrality that is actually not listening to himself or herself, depending on the vehicle. A player of neutrality will be the failing if they are not respecting their intuition, not respecting the sense, the feel they have of some choices, some food, some things, some interaction, some everything not being for them, not being resonating with them. So for instance, let's pretend we are a player of neutrality. We come to Earth, we incarnate, we're growing, and inside of us, we feel like somehow being in nature, isolated from other humans, is actually what we came for. We feel good this way. We feel surrounded with love. We feel happy. We feel joyful. We feel satisfied. We feel like, how we say that? The feeling of satiety. This is not the word we're trying to find in her vocabulary. Satisfaction of being full, being whole inside, like you took on everything you needed and you're now satisfied inside. So let's say if that player found this in nature without any interaction beside plants and animals and sometimes people, but not crowded, we'll think, you know what we're trying to paint as a picture. So if that
Yes.
neutrality is actually coming to experience for this, and this player of neutrality find himself in a crowded city in a work that is actually surrounded with people, craziness, busyness all the time. Everywhere is concrete, everywhere is building. There's no nature, no nothing. This player definitely chose wrong, and it will feel wrong inside, despite the fact that he could have made choices using both polarity. It doesn't matter. Even if he used his neutrality in that situation, intuitively, he will know this is not right for him. But if he keeps on moving towards that situation, if he keeps on settling himself in that situation, then he will set himself for failure because this is not what resonates truly with him. The other hand, if this same player of neutrality is actually at one point deciding that this busy concrete jungle city is not for him or her, and decide to leave that scene and use another place that is more surrounded with nature, less crowded, that he can actually slow down and everything, then automatically this player will feel more satisfied, will feel more completeness inside, and will be successful. So you see, it's exactly working the same way, depending on your working for the neutrality, what you call positive or negative. It's exactly the same way. The player needs to really connect with himself or herself in order to make sure that they are on the right path to ascend, frequently speaking, frequency wise. But the main difference for a neutrality player, and we are struggling to express that correctly because it's a hard concept to translate with words, especially with the ones she knows. But basically, the neutrality player, what really, really is of importance is the fact that he or her recognize all possibility as valid, as valuable. This player will not be judging this possibility is not good because it's, let's say, selfish, or because it's serving me and I'm stepping on my neighbor. This player will not recognize the one that is service of all, like, oh, I am actually using my time to please others and to bring joy to others as a good or bad thing. It will just recognize all of this as a possibility, as a valid option, as something of value. They will just have to decide at the given moment, will this choice serve their own purpose? Will this choice satisfy their joy? Will this fill them? Will this be good food for them? Or will this be the reverse, the opposite? But they will not discredit, or they will not label, or they will not, let's say, cut into words, positive and negative, all the options that are presented to them. They will just decide those are actually valid options. Now, which one is the one for me at this moment? This is the difference. Is it coming clear to you?
Yes, absolutely.
Would it be correct to say that non-judgment and non-evaluation of situations, people's actions is generally more present for a neutral player in their
Yes,
daily?
well,
Yeah.
we
Mhm.
would say that. That could be true.
Mhm.
That could
Okay.
be true. Let's say
Mm, yeah.
you have to understand also that neutral players, first of all, are not that many. There are not as many neutral players as you will find players from the other teams, because those neutral players usually vibrate higher. So if they already vibrate higher, you can understand why coming into the 3D might not be necessary for them. So in that sense, there is not that many players. But yes, those players tend to be more observing of a situation and really scanning the situation in full spectrum in order to be able to evaluate all valid choices, all perspective that could come out or from this situation, and then make their choice in terms of what will help them elevate or what will resonate with them.
Right. Very good. Let's imagine a neutral player incarnates on Earth and he grows up in a society, a collective that is not really aware of the neutral path, but only aware of negative and positive.
Yeah.
This kind of player, I would imagine, would not feel at home in
No.
any of the other polarities. How would such a player realize that they are neutral? What are the symptoms, basically?
We believe that these players will realize that they are neutral by realizing they can understand and appreciate each point of view from the other players. Meaning, one will realize that they are neutral if they can openly receive every player's choice as a valid option. Understand that from their perspective, this way of playing is a correct way of playing, is actually of value. Then the player will probably realize that they can mingle and appreciate every player's choice, contrary to most of the players, which will put them in a situation where they find themselves able to have a broader perspective than others, and they might recognize that. Let's say, an example, if you have an interaction and a conversation with several players, the one that will be the one understanding and not getting aggravated or irritated by point of views being different, but accepting that all those point of views are valid, they will recognize themselves as a neutrality. Most of the other players will be agitated, irritated, would not be willing to accept and receive and hold space for another player perspective if they are in what we can call opposite side. Are we explaining correctly to you?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So that would be a good way for a player of neutrality to understand that the information they are able to draw from a situation might be a little broader, might be a little closer than the whole of the situation than what other players may be able to draw from. So maybe we would say this player could receive and integrate more information. Probably that would be accurate. They will be able to integrate more information and decide which one, if all of them are valuable, which one is actually resonating with them, but without discrediting the ones that are not. This is a very, what you call, fine line here that is important to understand. As long as you can receive, as you can admit and consider that an opinion, option, a way of playing might be different than what you resonate with, but is not less valuable or valid because it's not resonating with you, then this is closer to neutrality.
I could imagine that growing up in a system in which it is suggested that the positive path is the preferable one could be quite problematic for such a player.
It could. Also, because in this playtime, apparently it's very, let's say, of importance that every player hold firm opinions or firm ideas on what's good or bad, because the good and bad ideas is already of importance, is already something that players in this playtime put on a pedestal, compared to a neutral player or from neutrality perspective. This would not make much sense to them because they will be able to see that within a situation, if the information given were slightly different, what you may call good will become bad, and what you may call bad will become good. Let's say we heard a story once, a Earthian story. We couldn't quite remember the whole story, but we remember one part of it. It was a story of two neighbors living in the countryside. One had a farm and the other had a farm as well. They would live, let's say, across the street from each other. One had a son to help him with the farm, and one had a son to help him with the farm as well. Now, both sons are now working with their parents on the farm. One son break his leg and is no longer able to help his parents. The neighbor come and say to his neighbor, "Oh, this is bad. Your son broke his leg. This is a bad thing for you." And the neighbor is answering, "It just is. I don't know if it's good or bad. It just is. And the other neighbor is quite disturbed by this statement. But a couple weeks later, army people are showing up and they are actually recruiting any young men able to fight. The one that has no broken leg is then being taken away from his family. The one that has the broken leg cannot fight and is not being taken away from his family. So you see, what the other one thought was a bad situation in different circumstances is now a good situation. And when the neighbor was saying, I don't know if it's good or bad, it just is. This will be, let's say, more of a neutral view on a given situation. Does that example help you understand? Oh yeah, so it completely baffled us that players could affirm so strongly that something is good or bad, that someone is good or bad, because it really depends on given circumstances. It's only at a team moment that this distinction could be valid. But if you change just one little parameter, then the whole situation now reads different. And maybe the same player calling it good or bad might not be able to use the same term to portray a situation that is now different.
Right. Yes. Thank you. You might have already answered that next question, but could you, in a compact way, describe what typical challenges or pitfalls would look like for a neutral player in everyday life?
Yes, we could give you one that is actually well known from Emily's perspective, which is once you can't play in this playtime that is so polarized, you want to belong somehow. So one of the biggest pitfalls from the player of neutrality will be to be caught up in the wanting to belong somewhere, wanting to belong to a specific community, to a specific group, because this player will be then influenced by, let's say, the trend going within this group. And the player neutrality might be reached somehow because of his desire of belonging, his choices, and let's say what he draws from situation could be impacted and influenced by the group he is so willing to belong to. So this is one of the biggest pitfalls that is also quite, how we can call it. We don't like the word normal, but we will use it just for this. It's also quite normal because each player will be looking for love somehow, because this is the number one essence of a soul, the frequency of love, no matter how it will be expressed or embraced. But the frequency of love is really one that matters a lot, as we can say, for a player. So if a player of neutrality coming to this playtime is proposed love from a group, but love unfortunately coming with condition, then this player might be tempted to take on a more polarized perspective. This could be also true for the two other teams, if you put a player of, let's say, right, let's call it this way, right side and dark side, and you put them in a group and they are only surrounded by other players, they would be seeking for love as well. So they also might fall into that pitfall of influence and change their way of choosing for themselves, which could lead to a complete unalignment, which could be quite devastating because they are not able to express their true self.
Mhm.
So this is a pitfall that could be applied to all of them. But yes, definitely one good example for the neutrality. Also, another one will be if this player has no freedom of choosing. If this player is forced to choose something and forced to consider every other option as a non-valuable option, this could be also a pitfall to this player. Because neutrality embraces all as possibility. But if this player is being told that no, only one way is correct, and every other perspective on the subject is not to be considered, that could also damage the player because now he is disturbed between what he strongly believes, meaning everything is a valid possibility depending on the circumstances, but now he's being told no, only one possibility exists. Every others are not. This could be quite disturbing. This could actually create some breaches in the brain of the player because it doesn't make sense, but he will have to make sense of it. Do you see the danger in it?
Yes. Mhm. So, would it be fair to say that a neutral player who has already realized that they don't strive to be part of a certain group and who values freedom of choice very much and designs their life in order to have and maintain that is already on a good path of neutrality?
Oh, yes, the groundwork has already been done. Yes, definitely. It would be so much easier to express themselves in those given circumstances for sure.
Very good. Do you have any question at this point from your point of view? Nice. Okay. Then I guess the next question, you have already answered it. The question would have been, where is the threshold from neutrality to the other two polarities? But I believe you've already answered that by saying that the whole spectrum is available to such a player.
Yes, remember, the whole spectrum is considered valuable and valid, meaning there is room for every perspective to exist and to be received as a valid perspective.
Is that aspect you just mentioned what makes a neutral player higher in vibration and closer to source?
We believe so, because the player is able to understand that a perspective comes with circumstances, and that if you alter those circumstances and change just a little bit the given information, then it will be a completely different situation. And once one player understands that, it's way easier to leave room for every possibility to exist. And because you accept every possibility and you somehow give them legitimacy, then you are closer to wholeness because you are not only considering your choices or some other choices that you may understand, but you're also considering every choices, even the ones that you don't understand, as a possibility because you understand the one making those choices has been given circumstances that might be different than yours, but that are still valid. This is why you are a little closer to the whole. You are actually holding space for everything and every perspective and everybody to exist with their own circumstances. And you are not judging and you are not, let's say, forbidding some parts of the whole to exist.
I guess this would also apply if a neutral player lived in partnership with a non-neutral player. Seeing the actions of the non-neutral partner they would be seen from a very neutral point of view.
Yes, neutral players could be amazing partners because they would be really, let's say, able to understand, hold place without judging the reactions or actions of their partner. This could be a major asset in a relationship because it would, let's say, it would give more space to this relationship to develop. It will give more possibility to this relationship to exist. And it will also somehow temper that relationship.
How could a person who is neutrally polarized explain themselves to someone, let's say a partner? Uh, how could they explain themselves to their partner that maybe doesn't understand them?
It would be pretty easy to explain themselves, but pretty hard for the partner to receive that explanation. So a neutral player will just explain their neutrality. But if you want the information to be conveyed, that means you have to depend on how the other one receives it and how the other one integrates it and how the other one digests it. And this is where you might encounter an issue because it will be very difficult for a player that is fully polarized to admit that, let's say, an opinion or an action that could be really, really wrong to them is not wrong at all. This is almost like you're forcing like a brain freeze on them, like you're kind of like short circuiting their brain as well, because they are not able to think this way. If they are completely polarized, then they would firmly hold on to their perspective and they will firmly hold on to their opinion of what's wrong, of what's negative, of what's not acceptable into their codes. So it will be fairly easy to explain. But if you're expecting it to be understood, this is where the difficulties will lie.
Are there any other challenges that a neutral player should maybe be aware of in this world we live in here on Earth?
Yes. One of the challenges that they would face is the fact that they might be able to, let's say, understand more informations right away. And so when you have somebody that is understanding more right away, this could somehow disconnect them from others that are not able to do the same. Then this player could feel like they are completely set apart, like they are isolated, like they are functioning completely differently, or if they really want to convey that they are grasping more information at the same time, this could put them in a very arrogant position, in a very more than you position. And so they will be somehow outcast or feared or disliked by others. So that could be an issue because it's either this player accept that they are able to take more, to gather more information than others, and therefore what they can understand fully, they will have to accept and others are not ready to, and be okay with this. So basically be okay with the fact that they will never be completely understood. Or, if they cannot do that, they will find themselves constantly battling, constantly fighting in their interactions, because they will be trying to make others understand what they see when others will not be able to do that.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Would it be possible for a neutral player, say you used the example earlier, someone who realizes they would like to live more in nature, more secluded, more by themselves? Could someone like that, who actually does that, chooses to move to a very secluded area, lives mostly by himself, maybe with a partner, but very little interaction with other people, other players. Would it be possible for such a player to polarize neutrally successfully?
I believe so. If it's in alignment with what the player came to experience, we believe so. Because the one that is resonating with living in a more secluded area in nature will be completely fulfilled with this, even if its daily life doesn't have a lot of human interactions. This will be fulfilling anyway. It will be enough. And they will be able to express their neutrality on a daily basis, not interacting with people necessarily, but interacting with themselves, like you say, with their partners, with their surrounding, with how they take care of their environment. But there is still room to express that neutrality. But yes, this player will be in alignment with what they came to experience. So therefore, it would be logically a pretty successful way to live their neutrality. But this is only true if this was the experience wished by the player. If the experience wished by the player was to connect with a lot of human beings, then this will not be accurate. This will not be adequate for that person.
But this player's feelings will let him know what
Yeah,
is the
absolutely.
right path.
Yes, we firmly believe in this, that every incarnated soul somehow, despite of the veil of forgetting, has a way to reconnect with their true self, has a way to remember they are more than just humans, because intuition is still present, and intuition is actually their true self. So whatever resonates or feels right, this is what we were talking about. Whatever feeds the soul and therefore the body as well, this will be able to be recognized by the player because there is still a link there. But this link could be very quiet. This is why there are ways to make that link stronger and louder so the player could follow the intuition more easily.
Right. Very good. What role, thank you so much first, and then what role do emotions and maybe also intense emotions play for a neutral player in everyday life?
The same as in other players, we believe. Let you detail your question so we are sure we understood it right.
Right. We said earlier that non-judgment, non-evaluation, a higher level of acceptance and tolerance towards the outside world are common aspects of a successful neutral player. What if something happens in that neutral player's life that makes them angry or
Oh,
frustrated or sad on a really strong level?
and we see now. We understand the question now. Well, first of all, let us say that accepting every possibility is not the same as not feeling them. Meaning you can be aware and you can accept that every possibility are valid, but it doesn't mean that some of them don't affect you a certain way emotionally. Let's say a neutral player could be angry, like 1,000% angry about something, but at the same time acknowledge that even if they are angry about it, what has been given has the right to exist and is understandable. But the way they receive it has also the right to exist and is also understandable because they can measure every component at parts, every energy or every given situation. Doesn't mean that they won't feel them. They come with their own emotion as well. So what could be neutral in a way that we accepted existence, when it comes to the way of how we feel about it, how we are touched by it, is different. It's two separated things. You can, let's try to take an example. Okay. We're going to take an example in food because we believe that will be easier with taste. So, let's say you acknowledge, you don't have to be a neutral player, but you acknowledge that spinach exists, right? Some will eat spinach and it would feel good and yummy and delicious. Some will eat spinach and it will feel disgusting, not good, and they will never want to touch this again. But everybody is able to say that spinach exists and understand why spinach could be good, because it has good nutriment or what so. But it doesn't mean that when you're going to ingest it, you're going to feel the same. A neutral player is quite similar to that. They can recognize that it is existing. They can recognize every given situation and admit that they have the right to exist. But they can also receive that situation through their senses, through their own emotions, quite differently. They don't have to be happy about it all the time. They can be angry, they can be sad, they can not like it, but it doesn't mean that they are judging it. Do you see the difference?
Right.
It's a very thin line between how you receive things and how you decide them to exist. If you're judgmental, if you put judgment on everything because you cannot tolerate the value of everything, of certain things, then it will be completely different than how you receive them in terms of feeling. Judging and feeling, emotions and opinions or judgments are different.
Right.
Although judgments and opinions can be triggered by emotions and even vice versa, they are still different. A neutral player would be able to have no judgment, using judgment as what we put into that words, right?
Mhm.
They will have no judgment, as they will accept everything as valid and valuable, but they will have preference in terms of how they make them feel, in terms of emotions. So see, they could go through the same as an other player emotion-wise, but they would not be closed off to the possibility of the other perspective to be valid. It is
Thank you.
hard to understand, I believe, but we are trying to use words to describe the concept that normally doesn't need words. So it is difficult.
Well, the information has just been beautiful and beautifully put as well. Like for me personally, I appreciate today so much because I felt so alone my whole life. And to hear this today is just, it's incredible for me.
We are very pleased to hear that. Perhaps you are identifying as a neutral player. Is that right?
Yeah. Yes.
Know that what you may feel from time to time, it is quite what you may call normal. that there is nothing different with you that should be. You are actually playing a game that you chose to play with a different perspective than most of the players. Sometimes, which could cause collapses and hurtfulness and casualties, if we may say. But it's not because you are not fully understood on the way you're playing and the way you're perceiving that game that you are not normal. You are just different because your spectrum and your ability to gather information and, let's say, translate them and receive and give them is quite different. Your spectrum is a little broader than other players. And it's okay. You will encounter heartache and even headaches the more you are trying to make yourself understood. If you can accept from the get-go that you might not be understood, but as long as you understand yourself, it's okay, then it will be much easier to move yourself through this playtime. It is not because others aren't able to understand you every time that they can't appreciate you. You do not have to understand fully something or someone in order to appreciate them. It is harder on you because the need to be understood is something that is very much profound and internal for human beings. But it's not necessary as long as you know that you understand yourself. And perhaps the information given today is reinforcing that understanding of yourself. So it is okay to be playing for that team. It is actually an amazing team, if we ask.
Thank you. That is just incredible. Thank you so much for today's information. I just have one more question. Is it common for neutrally polarized people for that to run in the family, or is it really random?
It's random. It would really depend on what the neutral players decided to experiment. Most of the neutral players like challenge. So most of the neutral players will choose families that are polarized heavily. But sometimes, in some cases, the experience that is chosen is requesting a family that is neutral as well. It would really depend on individual experience. But this will be decided before the player enters the game.
Benefits would such an experience have a neutral player deliberately choosing a very polarized family?
The effect will be to be closer to polarized players and reinforced their ability to stay neutral and also temper somehow, if needed, the polarizations of the players involved. Because when in contact of a neutral player, a polarized player broadens their spectrum as well. Because their interaction with someone being able to gather more information somehow is planting seed in them that are allowing them to see a little wider than they used to. So maybe the interest in that will be not only for the player entering as a neutral, but also for the players that are polarized that perhaps he or her chose to enter this playtime with. Sometimes the experience is mainly for ourselves as a player, but other times we are just here as a supporting role. We are just here because we chose to help a fellow soul experience playtime on Earth. And in order to make that experience the most beautiful experience they could get, we decide to accompany them and incarnate with them to support that experience. So it really depends on what agreement was taken prior to the incarnation.
Do you have any more questions? Okay. I had one more question, but it's gone right now. Maybe it comes back. I will use, in the meantime, the opportunity to ask a question about something that is on a very fine line between the positive and the negative polarization, because we have the concepts of self-love, which is looked at as something very positive, and also something like selfishness that is looked at as something very negative. And it can be hard to see the difference. Like, where does one end and the other begin?
We believe that it could be summarized in a very easy sentence. We will try our best. Self-love and selfishness will have two different intentions to start with. Someone practicing self-love usually wants to better themselves in order to help others better themselves, or in order to help others better, to be of service more efficiently. So in that case, self-love is completely compatible with service of all. Selfishness usually doesn't have as a goal to serve other better, doesn't have as a goal to help others better. It has as a goal to help self better, to focus on self because self needs to be better, but not better for others. Self needs to be better so self could feel better. Do you see the difference?
Right. The intention makes the difference.
Exactly. The intention is everything.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Let me check if there was a question that's left. No, I think we've covered it all. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you believe would be helpful to know for neutral players out there who may come in contact with the material?
Well, so many things will be helpful to know. We think we touched the surface at least on some helpful tool for them. But like we were mentioning to Kai, this is actually very important for them to accept the fact that they might never be understood in their vision of life, that they might never be understood in their reaction or action or how they perceive their surrounding and others. Because once you're able to gather more information, you can englobe everybody else, but not the reverse is possible. When our spectrum is narrow, it is very hard to understand a broader perspective. So we believe that for players of neutrality, it will be so much easier on them if they will just appreciate the fact that they are able to value all perspective, to value all aspects of a given situation, and be okay with the fact that maybe only them in the room is able to give all perspectives a value. And that should be okay. There is no shame in that. There is no need to feel isolated or alone or misunderstood. They are understanding now that they just are able to grasp more information and to integrate more information. And this is absolutely okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you so much for this wonderful session today.
Yes.
Kai is absolutely happy and joyful. And I believe a lot of others of his team, so to speak, who will come in touch with the material will feel the same way. This is, we believe, very helpful information for neutral players out there.
Happy it is.
Is there anything you would like to say to us, to either Emily, of course, or to me or to Kai before we close the session for today?
To Emily, not much, except maybe we are sorry about the tension because apparently we used a little bit more than we intended to in her neck and her hands. So we are apologizing if this is of discomfort when she wakes up. And for you guys, well, first of all, as always, Mario, it is such a pleasure to have those conversations. And thank you for calling upon us and wanting our help to serve in this playtime because it is a pleasure to be of service. And Kai, you are more than welcome to attend any session as you please. We are very happy of your presence here with us, and we love to have conversation with such beautiful spirits. So do not hesitate to come back anytime. You are more than welcome to attend. And again, thank you for the work that you are doing, Mario. This is really appreciated by us and also by Emily.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. You guys are awesome. Emily is awesome. This is just beautiful work. It's great. Very exciting and cool.
All right. Then we will now let you go, Rufus, if this is all right with you. And I look forward to our next conversation.
Us too. Till next time.
Very well. I now ask Rufus and all other well-meaning higher dimensional energies and beings who have given us information here today to recede to where they belong with much love and gratitude.